She agreed to pay the paralyzed CEO for money, but ended up in the most unexpected love story. What if the man who swore he never needed love fell for the woman who saved him? Tonight we bring you a heart-wrenching story of a billionaire who had everything except a heart willing to love. But fate had other plans. A tragic accident leaves him helpless. A mysterious woman enters his life, and a love he never believed in shatters every wall he built. But can love truly heal a broken heart? Or will secrets, betrayal, and one heartbreaking test destroy everything before it even begins? Stay with us till the end to witness a love story like no other, one filled with passion, heartbreak, redemption, and an ending that will leave you in tears. This story isn't just about love, it's about healing, trust, and the power of true devotion. If you've ever doubted love, this story will change the way you see it forever. For all new viewers, welcome to Alcott's Stories. If you love deeply emotional love stories filled with romance, suspense, and powerful lessons, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Now let's dive into a love story that will stay with you long after the final words are spoken. The city skyline stretched endlessly before Alexander Steele as he stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and deep blue, but he barely noticed. His sharp, calculating mind was fixed on the numbers flashing across his monitors. Data sets predicting upcoming hurricanes, wind speeds, and the shifting climate patterns that determined the fate of millions. As the CEO of Steele Weather Innovations, the world's leading meteorological research company, Alexander lived and breathed precision. Every storm he predicted, every disaster he helped mitigate, only strengthened his position as the undisputed genius of climate forecasting. But beyond the technology, beyond the billions in funding, there was nothing else. No warmth, no love, only control. Love, in his opinion, was an illusion, a distraction, a weakness. He had seen men, powerful men, fall apart because of it. His own father, a formidable businessman, had nearly lost his empire chasing after his mother, who had long grown tired of his dedication to work over family. Alexander had sworn never to make the same mistake. Love is a waste of time, he would say whenever his parents brought up the idea of marriage, and they brought it up often. That evening, as he scrolled through a report detailing upcoming weather anomalies, the familiar voice of his mother, Eleanor Steele, echoed through his office speaker. "Alex, you can't go on like this. You're 32. At least consider meeting someone." He exhaled sharply, rubbing his temple. "Here we go again." "Mother, I run $1 billion company. The world depends on my work. I don't have time for pointless affairs," he replied, his tone as cold as the Arctic winds he studied. "Pointless? Alexander, you've never even given love a chance." "I don't need to." His voice was clipped, final. A long sigh crackled over the speaker. His mother was relentless. She wanted grandchildren, a family name to carry on. But Alexander saw no point in emotional entanglements. "What about that lovely daughter of Mr. Caldwell?" she pressed. "No. Or perhaps Victoria—" "Mother, stop!" He cut her off. His voice carried the finality of a storm warning. "I don't need a woman in my life." "One day, Alexander, someone will prove you wrong," she warned. He let out a humorless chuckle. "I highly doubt that." But fate had other plans. As the weeks passed, Alexander buried himself even deeper in his work. His entire existence revolved around analyzing climate models, managing global disaster response teams, and perfecting AI-driven storm prediction systems. But with every new forecast, his mother's words haunted him. "One day, someone will prove you wrong." Impossible. He had everything under control. Or so he thought. Then came the night that changed everything. Alexander had just left an international climate conference when chaos struck. As he walked toward his sleek black car, parked beneath the dim glow of a street lamp, a sudden force slammed into his back. Pain exploded through his body as he hit the pavement hard. Voices, shadows, ruthless hands. A gang of masked men emerged from the darkness. They wanted money, but more than that, they wanted to break him. They rained punches and kicks upon him, their cruelty swift and merciless. The pain was unbearable, each strike sending shockwaves through his body. He fought back, his strength unmatched. But even a powerful man like him couldn't take on 5 attackers. Then came the worst blow, a brutal strike to his spine. The world spun. He collapsed, unable to move his legs. He never knew that would be the last time he would stand on his own. As sirens wailed in the distance, the last thing Alexander saw before slipping into unconsciousness was the cold, indifferent sky above him. Days later, he awoke in a hospital bed, trapped in a body that no longer obeyed him. "Alexander, you may never walk again," the doctor had told him, voice laced with professional sorrow. "Paralyzed." The words rang in his ears like a death sentence. For the first time in his life, Alexander Steele had lost control, and he hated it. When his mother entered his hospital room, her eyes brimming with concern, Alexander barely acknowledged her. "Darling, we'll find the best specialists." "Don't," he interrupted, his voice cold. "It's over." "Don't say that. You are strong." "This is my life now," he muttered. "I'll handle it alone." But his mother would not accept that. "You need someone to help you recover, someone to care for you." Alexander clenched his jaw. The thought of needing help was unbearable. He was a man who had built his empire from sheer willpower. Now he was reduced to someone who couldn't even stand on his own 2 feet. "I don't want a nurse," he said flatly. "Too bad." The steel in his mother's voice surprised him. "I've already hired someone, and she's arriving tomorrow." Alexander turned his head sharply, his blue eyes darkening. "I don't want some stranger in my house, fussing over me like I'm helpless." His mother crossed her arms. "Then get up and walk, Alexander." Silence. He had no argument. With a deep sigh, his mother softened. "Just give her a chance. If you hate her, I'll find someone else. But you can't do this alone." Alexander closed his eyes. He didn't want anyone watching him in his weakest state. But for the first time, he had no choice. And that choice would change his life forever. As the hospital monitors beeped softly in the background, Alexander stared out the window. The world outside continued as if nothing had changed. But his world would never be the same. And soon a woman was about to enter it. A woman who would break every wall around his heart. He just didn't know it yet. The grand ballroom of the International Business Summit gleamed with golden chandeliers, reflecting the wealth and power of the elite gathered within. Alexander Steele, dressed in a tailored black suit, stood tall among them. He was more than just a CEO. He was a visionary, a man who commanded respect without ever demanding it. As he sipped his whiskey, nodding absent-mindedly to a conversation about climate investment strategies, his mind was already elsewhere, calculating the upcoming week's storm patterns, analyzing potential disruptions, strategizing his next move. He never wasted time on anything emotional. That was why, when a stunning socialite tried to engage him in flirtatious conversation, he simply offered a polite nod before excusing himself. He had no interest in love or companionship. His world was made of logic, of control. But that night, fate had a different plan. The parking garage, 11:37 p.m. The sound of his footsteps echoed against the cold concrete walls of the underground parking garage. His private driver was waiting at the far end, the black luxury car's headlights cutting through the dimly lit space. Alexander adjusted his cufflinks, walking with the confidence of a man who knew he was untouchable. Then, a sound, a faint shuffle, a whisper of movement. His instincts, honed through years of dealing with ruthless business sharks, sharpened immediately. He wasn't alone. Before he could react, a blow struck the back of his head. Pain exploded in his skull as he staggered forward, his vision swimming. Footsteps, shadows, voices. "Take him down," a low voice growled. 5 masked men emerged from the darkness. Alexander's body tensed. They weren't here to rob him. They were here to destroy him. The first attacker lunged, but Alexander moved fast. He dodged, grabbing the man's wrist and twisting hard. A sickening crack echoed through the garage as the man howled in pain. But the others were quicker. A second man swung a metal rod, striking Alexander across the ribs. White-hot pain shot through his body. He gritted his teeth, refusing to fall. He was stronger than this. But then, the final strike. A steel-toed boot slammed into his lower spine. Alexander collapsed, a choked gasp escaping his lips as pain like fire surged through him. He couldn't move. His limbs, they wouldn't respond. The attackers stood over him, their faces hidden. "Not so powerful now, are you?" One of them sneered before delivering a final, merciless kick to his ribs. Darkness swallowed him whole. The steady beeping of medical machines pulled him from the abyss. Pain wrapped around him like chains, binding him to the cold, sterile hospital bed. As his vision cleared, he saw a familiar face, his mother. Eleanor Steele sat beside him, her perfectly styled hair now slightly disheveled, her usual composure replaced by something rare: fear. "Alexander," her voice trembled, her fingers gripping his hand tightly. He tried to move. Nothing. His body, his legs, felt like dead weight. Panic surged through him as he forced his voice out. Why can't I?" A new voice answered him. The doctor, Dr. Whitmore, a respected neurosurgeon, stood at the foot of his bed, flipping through charts with grim finality. "Mr. Steele," the doctor began, his tone professional yet heavy, "you suffered severe spinal trauma from the attack. The impact caused extensive nerve damage." The words didn't make sense. Not at first. Then, the final blow. "There's a chance you may never walk again." Silence. The room collapsed around him. His empire, his power, his control, gone. Days passed in a blur of pain and frustration, physical therapy, tests, medical consultations. The best doctors in the world flew in, but none could offer certainty. Recovery is possible, but unpredictable. Alexander heard their words but refused to accept them. He was not a man who accepted weakness. Yet here he was, unable to even stand, forced to rely on nurses for the most basic tasks. Humiliation burned him from the inside out. His entire life had been built on strength, dominance, and absolute control. Now, he couldn't even get out of bed without help. The rage inside him simmered like a storm waiting to break. One evening, after yet another failed attempt at movement, Alexander reached his limit. The room was empty except for the machines that hummed beside him, his body trapped in a prison of stillness. His fingers clenched into fists as he slammed his hand against the bedframe. "Is this it?" he muttered bitterly. "Is this how it ends?" He had built an empire, predicted hurricanes before they struck, saved countless lives, yet he couldn't even save himself. The rage burned, hot and consuming. Then, a decision. If his body refused to obey him, then fine. He would adapt, he would fight. But he would never let anyone see his weakness. The next morning, his mother entered his hospital room, her expression determined. "You're coming home," she announced. Alexander raised an eyebrow. "And how exactly do you expect me to function?" "You'll have help." His jaw tightened. Help. He hated the word. "I don't want a damn caretaker," he snapped. Eleanor ignored his outburst. "She'll be arriving tomorrow. And that's final." Before he could argue, she kissed his forehead and left, leaving him furious and helpless. That night, as he lay in his hospital bed, staring at the ceiling, Alexander Steele swore one thing. He would never let himself need anyone. But fate was already setting the pieces in motion, because the next day, a woman would walk into his life, a woman who would change everything, and he wouldn't even see it coming. The morning sun bathed the Steele mansion in a golden glow, its towering glass windows reflecting the lush greenery surrounding it. The estate, known for its modern yet regal architecture, symbolized wealth, power, and dominance. Everything Alexander Steele once embodied. But inside, behind those luxurious walls, a broken man resided, and today his world was about to change. Miles away in a modest apartment in Brooklyn, Serena Hayes clenched her phone tightly, her heartbeat thudding in her ears. "Serena, I don't have much time." Her brother's voice crackled through the line, heavy with desperation. "They came to the house again. They're threatening me, sis." Fear coiled around her chest. Her younger brother, Caleb, had fallen into debt. Deep, dangerous debt. She had tried everything to pull him out, working extra shifts, saving every penny. But no matter how hard she fought, the debt only grew. And now she was out of options. Her fingers trembled as she looked at the contract on her table. The job offer to care for a paralyzed millionaire. A high-paying job. A chance to save Caleb. "I'll fix this," she promised, her voice firm despite the storm of emotions raging inside her. She ended the call, took a deep breath, and signed the contract. She had no idea that by accepting this job, she wasn't just stepping into a millionaire's house. She was stepping into fate's twisted plan. The black sedan pulled into the long private driveway of the Steele estate. Serena stepped out, her heart pounding as she took in the sheer grandeur of the place. Tall marble pillars lined the entrance. The massive double doors loomed ahead, guarded by silent staff who watched her with curiosity. She adjusted her plain yet professional attire, a simple blouse and jeans, feeling wildly out of place in this world of wealth. Before she could knock, the doors swung open, revealing Eleanor Steele. "Miss Hayes." Serena nodded, her breath catching slightly. Alexander's mother was graceful yet intimidating, her sharp green eyes assessing her with the precision of a woman who had seen far too much of the world. "Follow me," Eleanor said, turning swiftly. Serena swallowed hard and stepped inside. The mansion's interior was breathtaking. High ceilings, polished marble floors, priceless art decorating every wall. Yet despite its beauty, it felt cold. She was led to a hallway where a single door stood slightly ajar. Inside, a man sat in a wheelchair, his broad shoulders stiff, his strong jaw set in hard lines. Serena's breath hitched. Alexander Steele. Even confined to a wheelchair, he radiated power. His chiseled features, sharp blue eyes, and dark, neatly styled hair made him strikingly handsome. But his expression, it was one of pure resentment. His gaze locked onto her, cold and unwelcoming. "You're the new nurse?" he asked, his voice dripping with disinterest. Serena hesitated before replying. "Yes, Mr. Steele, I'm Serena Hayes." He exhaled sharply. "Wonderful. Another stranger invading my space." His dismissive tone sent a wave of irritation through her. This man was impossible, but she couldn't afford to lose this job. So she forced a polite smile and said, "I'm here to help, not invade." Alexander let out a humorless chuckle. "Help?" He leaned back in his wheelchair. "You're wasting your time. I don't need help. I don't need a babysitter." Serena clenched her jaw. She had met difficult people before, but this man? He wasn't just rude. He was bitter, angry, and hell-bent on pushing everyone away. She inhaled deeply, reminding herself of why she was here. Her brother needed her. No matter how difficult Alexander Steele was, she would not give up. The hours dragged on. Alexander refused to cooperate, rejecting her attempts to assist him with therapy, meals, or even simple conversations. But Serena wasn't easily intimidated. She remained patient, unwavering. Late that night, as she settled into the guest room assigned to her, she heard a sharp noise from Alexander's room. Instantly alert, she hurried down the hallway and pushed the door open. Alexander was in his wheelchair, his fists clenched, his breathing ragged. He had tried to stand, failed, and fallen back painfully. Serena rushed to his side. "Are you hurt?" "Get out," he growled, his pride bruised more than his body. She didn't move. "Let me check." "I said get out." His voice thundered through the room, but Serena stood firm. Instead of leaving, she knelt in front of him, looking up into his stormy blue eyes. "You don't have to do this alone," she said softly. For a moment, silence stretched between them. Then Alexander looked away. He wouldn't say it, but for the first time, he didn't feel completely alone. As Serena left his room that night, exhaustion pulling at her, she couldn't shake the strange feeling in her chest. She had taken this job out of desperation, but now something told her this was only the beginning of something much, much bigger. And neither she nor Alexander had any idea what was coming next. The night was heavy with silence inside the Steele mansion, broken only by the rhythmic ticking of the grand clock in the hallway. Alexander Steele sat in his wheelchair, his broad shoulders tense, his sharp blue eyes filled with undeniable frustration. He hated this, hated being dependent, hated feeling weak, hated that some woman he didn't even know was now in charge of his care. And most of all, he hated how, despite himself, he was starting to notice her. Serena Hayes stood in front of him, arms crossed, her brown eyes burning with determination. Alexander had spent his life surrounded by people who either feared him or worshipped him. But this woman, she challenged him, pushed back, and he hated it. "Get out! I don't need a nurse," he snapped, his voice laced with irritation. Serena, unfazed, arched an eyebrow. "Oh, so you're just going to sit there and waste away? Fine." Alexander narrowed his eyes, waiting for her to fold like everyone else. Instead, she shrugged and turned away. "Starve then," she said, her tone sharp but not unkind. "But I won't let you die on my watch." With that, she left the room, shutting the door behind her. For the first time in his life, Alexander Steele was left completely speechless. Hours passed. The mansion remained eerily silent. Alexander sat in the darkness, his mind raging with thoughts. Who does she think she is, walking away like that? His pride burned, but deep down a strange warmth stirred within him. She didn't treat him like a fragile patient. She treated him like a man who needed to get over himself. Still, his stubbornness refused to fade. He wasn't hungry. He didn't need help. At least, that's what he told himself. But then the pain started. A sharp, unbearable cramp shot through his legs. His breath caught, a strained groan escaping his lips. Serena heard it. Even in her room, half asleep, the faint sound of pain immediately woke her. Her body moved before her mind even processed it. She rushed down the hallway, barefoot and frantic, her heart pounding. When she reached his room, she didn't hesitate. "Alexander," she called softly, pushing the door open. Her eyes locked on to him. Sweat lined his forehead. His hands were gripping the armrests of his wheelchair, knuckles white. His jaw was clenched in obvious pain, but his eyes held something else. Pride. And prideful men didn't ask for help. Serena took a careful step closer. "Do you need help?" Silence. A long, thick silence that stretched between them, filled only by the sound of his uneven breathing. For a moment, she thought he would snap at her again. Instead, something changed in his expression. His sharp blue eyes met hers, not with annoyance, not with anger, but with something new, something uncertain. She cared, and for the first time in his life, Alexander Steele didn't know why that mattered. Serena sighed, stepping closer, refusing to let his stubbornness push her away. "You're in pain," she stated, her voice softer now. "Let me help." Alexander hesitated. Every fiber of his being told him to refuse. But for the first time since his accident, he gave in. He exhaled sharply, looking away. "Fine." Serena wasted no time. She knelt beside his wheelchair, her hands gently resting on his tense legs. "I'm going to massage the muscles, okay?" she murmured. He gave a small nod, his jaw still tight. The moment her hands touched his skin, a strange warmth spread through him. Her fingers moved in slow, careful motions, pressing into the tight muscles with unexpected gentleness. His breathing steadied. The pain slowly began to ease, and with it, the cold distance between them started to melt. As she worked, Serena risked a glance up at him. His usual hard expression had softened, his head leaning back slightly, eyes closed. For once, he looked peaceful. She smiled a little. Maybe he wasn't so impossible after all. "You're good at this," he murmured suddenly. Serena blinked. A compliment? From him? "Thanks," she said, shaking her head in amusement. "Maybe you're not as bad as I thought." Alexander opened his eyes, his lips twitching at her words. "Don't get used to it." She laughed, a soft, melodic sound that filled the once empty room. And for the first time since his accident, Alexander Steele didn't feel quite so alone. The days inside Steele Mansion passed in a slow, quiet rhythm. The world outside continued as usual. Business meetings, stock market shifts, and weather updates flashing across the news. But for Alexander Steele, life had stopped the moment he lost the ability to walk. Yet somehow something was changing. And that change had a name: Serena Hayes. Serena's presence had become a constant in his life. At first, she was just another employee, another person his parents had forced into his space. But unlike everyone else, she didn't walk on eggshells around him. She challenged him. She faced his temper without fear. But most of all, she cared. It started in small ways. When he struggled to reach for something, she handed it to him without a word. When his hands trembled with frustration, she covered them with hers, steadying him. But the moment he truly realized just how much she had become his anchor was the night the nightmares came. It was past midnight. The mansion was silent, except for the occasional crack of thunder outside. Alexander was trapped in a dream, a memory of the attack, the brutal hits, the voices, the feeling of helplessness. His breath hitched, his hands clenched into fists. Then, a soft touch. "Alexander, wake up." Her voice cut through the nightmare like a blade of light. His eyes flew open, chest heaving, and there she was, Serena. She was kneeling beside his bed, her face filled with concern, her hands gently gripping his. "You are having a nightmare," she whispered. For a moment he couldn't speak. His pride told him to brush it off, to pretend he was fine. But his body betrayed him. His breathing was ragged, his fingers trembled, and Serena didn't look away. She didn't pity him, she just stayed. Serena squeezed his hand. "You're safe now," she murmured. Her words, simple yet powerful, wrapped around him like warmth in a freezing storm. He should have told her to leave, but he didn't. Instead, he held onto her hand just a little longer, and as she sat there, keeping watch over him, he realized something he wasn't ready to admit. She made him feel safe. The next morning, Alexander woke up differently. The nightmare hadn't returned. His body didn't feel as tense, and as his eyes adjusted to the morning light, his first thought wasn't about work or his broken body. It was about her. Where was she? Would she come in soon? What kind of ridiculous argument would they have today? The realization hit him like a shockwave. Why the hell was he thinking about her? He was Alexander Steele, the man who didn't believe in love. And yet, later that day, Serena walked into his room, carrying a tray of food. "Breakfast," she announced, setting it down. "You better eat this, or I'm force-feeding you." He smirked, shaking his head. "Bossy as ever." Serena rolled her eyes. "And yet, you haven't fired me." Alexander grabbed a fork, but as he did, his gaze landed on her. She had tied her hair up into a high bun, a few loose strands framing her face. It was such a simple thing. Yet for some reason, he couldn't stop staring. Her neck, the soft curve of her collarbone, the way her brown skin glowed under the morning sunlight. His heart skipped a beat. "What the hell?" He tore his gaze away, clenching his jaw. Number. This wasn't happening. It was nothing. Just the effect of having someone around all the time. That was all. At least, that's what he told himself. But that night, as Alexander lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, his mind refused to quiet down. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her. Her warmth, her fire, the way she never backed down from him. For the first time in his life, Alexander Steele was afraid. Not of losing his company, not of being weak, but of the possibility that he was feeling something he had spent his entire life running from. Something he had never wanted to believe in. Love. The night was still, the kind of silence that carried secrets. The grand Steele mansion was bathed in silver moonlight, casting shadows across the endless hallways. Alexander Steele sat in his dimly lit bedroom, pretending to read a book, though his eyes had long stopped moving across the words. Something was bothering him, something unsettling. It was her, Serena. Every day she took care of him as if he were the most important person in the world. She had become his anchor, the one person who didn't treat him like a broken man. And yet, there was something about her, something she wasn't saying. Then he heard it. A voice. Her voice. Soft, desperate. Alexander frowned, setting his book aside. It was late. Who was she talking to at this hour? He reached for his wheelchair, rolling silently toward the slightly open door. He wasn't proud of eavesdropping, but something in his gut told him he needed to hear this. And then, "Please, just a little more time," Serena whispered into the phone. "I'll get the money." Alexander felt the air leave his lungs. His grip on the wheelchair tightened. Money. She was talking about money. His heart thundered against his ribs, but he forced himself to stay still, listening. "I swear I'm doing everything I can," she continued. "Just don't do anything reckless. I'll figure it out." A pause, then softer, almost broken. I promise. I won't let you down. Alexander's jaw clenched. Was this why she was here? Was she just another gold digger pretending to care? A bitter laugh almost escaped him. How stupid had he been? Had he really started believing in her? In love? His heart screamed that it wasn't true, but his mind refused to be fooled. He had spent years watching people pretend to care about him. Fake friendships, fake business partners, even fake lovers. And now was Serena just another one of them? Had she tricked him with her warmth, her kindness, the way she never left his side even when he was at his lowest? Alexander's breathing grew heavy. He had let his guard down. And for what? A woman who was just waiting to take his money? His hands trembled with anger, but also something else. Hurt. Deep, undeniable hurt. He wanted to believe she was different, but he wasn't a fool. He couldn't be a fool. Not again. Not ever. As he rolled back into his room, his mind was already working. He couldn't confront her. Not yet. If she was a liar, she would deny everything. He needed proof. He needed to see if her love was real, or if it was all an act. And so, a plan formed in his mind. A test. A test that would either prove her loyalty or shatter his last hope in love. Little did he know, the truth was far more shocking than he ever imagined. The grand Steele mansion was bathed in soft golden light as the evening settled in. Outside, the wind whispered against the tall glass windows, but inside Alexander's room, there was only the sound of deep, steady breathing, his breathing and hers. Serena knelt beside him, carefully adjusting the support around his legs. The once powerful CEO, who had ruled boardrooms with a single word, now relied on her to stand. She had spent months tending to him, never once wavering, never once showing frustration at his stubbornness. But tonight, there was something different in the air, something heavy, something undeniable, and it was about to change both of their lives forever. Serena moved with practiced ease, placing her arm around his waist as she helped him up. His muscles tensed under her touch, and for a brief second, he hesitated. That was unlike him. Alexander Steele never hesitated, but tonight, as her fingers pressed against his side, something inside him snapped. A longing, a realization. Before she could pull away, his hand slid around her waist, holding her still. Serena gasped softly, her wide brown eyes meeting his piercing blue gaze. Alexander? His fingers pressed lightly against the fabric of her dress, his grip firm yet hesitant. He was always composed, always in control, but tonight he was anything but. His next words shattered the silence between them. Serena, I think I'm in love with you. For a moment, Serena forgot how to breathe. His words hung in the air, heavy, impossible, unreal. This wasn't happening. He couldn't love her. Alexander, you can't, she began, her voice barely above a whisper. His grip on her waist tightened slightly, not in force, but in desperation. Why not? He demanded. His voice was raw, edged with something she had never heard from him before. Vulnerability. Serena opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Because what could she say? That she had dreamed of this moment? That every night she lay awake wondering what it would feel like to be wanted by a man like him? That every time he looked at her, her heart betrayed her? But she knew better. Alexander, you're a billionaire, she forced out, her voice shaking. And I'm me, a woman who took this job because she needed money. Our worlds don't match. She tried to step back, but his arms didn't let her. I don't care about money. His words sent a chill down her spine. I don't care about status. I don't care about anything except you, Serena. The way he said her name made her knees weak. Her lips trembled, but she refused to let herself believe it. It was impossible. Men like him didn't love women like her, did they? His gaze searched hers, desperate for something, anything. But she didn't answer. She couldn't, because if she did, she would fall. And falling for Alexander Steele was the kind of mistake that could break her heart forever. Tears pricked at the edges of her eyes, but she blinked them away, turning her face slightly. He exhaled sharply, and for the first time since he had met her, Alexander Steele felt something he had never felt before. Fear, not of rejection, but of losing something he didn't even realize he needed until now. And so, that night, he made his boldest request, a request that would test everything between them, a request that would either bring them closer or tear them apart forever. "Stay with me tonight," he said softly. Serena's breath hitched. The room felt smaller, the air thicker. She looked at him, her heart pounding, knowing that whatever happened next, there was no turning back. The clock ticked softly in the dimly lit bedroom, the only sound filling the silence between them. Serena sat stiffly at the edge of the bed, her fingers nervously gripping the edge of her dress. Alexander's piercing blue eyes never left her face. Then he said it. "Serena, bathe me." Her breath caught in her throat. I, I can't," she stammered, her heart racing wildly. His gaze softened, but his voice carried a quiet plea. "Please." A simple word, but it was enough to send a shiver down her spine. She had bathed him before, assisted him in the hospital, helped him when he was too weak to move. But this felt different. This wasn't just duty, this was intimate. And the way he was looking at her, it made her body betray her mind. The warm steam curled around them as Serena hesitantly stepped forward. Her hands trembled as she unbuttoned his shirt, revealing his broad, well-defined chest. The water had already been prepared in the massive marble tub, and she grabbed a sponge, soaking it in warm water before running it gently over his skin. Her fingers grazed the ridges of his muscles, and she swallowed hard. His breath hitched. The heat in the room wasn't just from the water anymore. She tried to focus, tried to pretend this was just another night of helping him. But it wasn't, because as she poured warm water over his shoulders, her eyes met his. And in that moment, something shifted, something undeniable, something dangerous. Alexander lifted his hand, his wet fingers tracing her cheek. Serena froze, her skin tingling at his touch. "You're trembling," he murmured. She forced out a nervous laugh. "Of course I am. This isn't supposed to happen." His fingers slid down, tilting her chin upward. "And yet it is." She wanted to move away, to remind herself that he was her patient, that she was here for a job, for her brother. But when his thumb brushed against her lips, her resolve broke. She had spent months denying what she felt, months convincing herself that Alexander Steele was nothing more than a cold, untouchable billionaire. But tonight, he wasn't untouchable. Tonight, he was just a man who wanted her. And then, it happened. His lips touched hers, firm yet hesitant, testing. Serena's entire body stiffened, but only for a second. Because the moment his warmth pressed against her, something inside her shattered. She melted into him, her hands pressing against his damp chest, feeling the heat of his skin against her fingertips. It was slow at first, gentle, questioning, but as his grip tightened around her waist, the hesitation faded, replaced by something deeper. Something neither of them could stop. Passion, longing, everything they had both been denying for too long. Serena didn't remember how they moved from the bathroom to the bed. She only remembered the feel of his hands, the way his fingers traced the curves of her back, the way his lips burned against her skin, leaving behind a trail of fire. She had never felt this before, this raw, consuming need, and neither had he. Alexander had spent his entire life avoiding love, dismissing it as a weakness. But with Serena in his arms, he realized something terrifying. She wasn't his weakness. She was his strength. And that night, for the first time, he let himself fall, completely. As the night faded into dawn, Serena lay beside him, her head resting against his chest. For the first time in years, Alexander didn't feel like a man trapped in his own pain. He felt alive. But outside, danger was waiting. In the darkness, a pair of eyes watched the mansion from afar, unseen, unnoticed, and planning something that would change everything, forever. The golden rays of morning streamed through the tall windows, casting a soft glow across the room. Serena stirred, her body still warm from the memories of the night before. For the first time in years, she had fallen asleep in the arms of someone who made her feel cherished. A small, sleepy smile touched her lips as she reached out, expecting to feel the warmth of Alexander beside her. But all she touched was emptiness. Her brows furrowed as she slowly opened her eyes. Then she saw it. Her breath caught in her throat. Her bed was covered in money. Bundles of crisp bills, stacks of cash. A fortune spread across the sheets like a cruel joke. Her heart pounded violently against her rib cage as her eyes darted around in confusion. And then, her gaze landed on the small white envelope sitting neatly on the pillow. A letter. With trembling fingers, she picked it up, her stomach twisting with unease. She unfolded the paper and read the words that shattered her soul. Take it all. That's what you wanted, right? I'm leaving you. Serena felt like the ground beneath her had disappeared. Her fingers clenched around the letter, her hands shaking uncontrollably. No, no, this can't be happening. Tears burned in her eyes as she looked around wildly, hoping, praying, that this was just some kind of sick misunderstanding. But deep down she knew. This was a trap, a test. And worst of all, Alexander believed she had failed. She stumbled out of bed, the silk sheets falling away as she rushed across the room. Her bare feet pressed against the cold marble floor as she sprinted toward the door, her voice cracking with desperation. Alexander! Silence. The house felt empty, too quiet, too lifeless. Her heart pounded in terror as she ran through the mansion, calling his name again. Alexander! No! Please, come back! She threw open doors, searching for him in every room, the living room, the study, the hallway. But he was gone. Serena collapsed against the grand staircase, her breath coming in short, broken gasps. Her chest ached. The man she had fallen for, the man she had given herself to, had abandoned her. And why? Because he thought she was like everyone else? Because he thought she was after his money? A sob tore from her throat as she clutched the letter to her chest. She had never cared about his wealth. She had never once thought about what he could give her. All she had ever wanted was him, his love, his heart, his trust. And yet, he had thrown her away like she was nothing, like she was just another gold digger. Her hands curled into fists. How could he? Didn't last night mean anything to him? Didn't he feel it too? Or had it all been a test from the start? Unbeknownst to her, Alexander wasn't far. He stood behind the partially open door of his private study, his hands clenched into fists as he listened to her cries. His heart twisted painfully at the sound. Her voice was raw, filled with real agony. But was it real? Was she crying for him or for the money? He wanted to step out, wanted to take her in his arms and tell her it was all a lie, that he never wanted to leave her. But the doubt in his heart kept him frozen in place. Was she truly different? Or had he been a fool to believe in love? His jaw tightened. He had to know. He had to see what she would do next. And so he waited in the shadows, watching. Serena sat there for what felt like an eternity. Her tears had dried, but the pain in her chest remained. She looked around the luxurious mansion, the expensive chandeliers, the priceless paintings, the furniture worth more than her entire life savings. She could take it all. If she was truly the woman Alexander thought she was, she could walk away rich. She could take his money and never look back. But she didn't. Instead, she did something that made Alexander's heart stop. She reached for the bundles of cash on the bed and threw them to the floor. Then in a voice filled with more pain than he had ever heard, she whispered, I don't want your damn money, Alexander. I just wanted you. She pressed the letter against her heart, her body shaking. Why did you leave me? Why did you think so little of me? Why did you break me? The regret hit Alexander like a thunderstorm. His chest ached, his breath caught in his throat. He had doubted her, compared her to the women who had only ever seen him as a bank account. And now, he had hurt the only person who truly loved him. A painful lump formed in his throat as he took a step forward. It was time to face the biggest mistake of his life. Serena was still sitting on the staircase, silent tears slipping down her face, when she suddenly felt warm arms wrap around her from behind. Her body went still. That touch. She knew that touch. And when a deep, familiar voice whispered against her ear, her entire world stopped. "I'm sorry." Her breath caught. Her eyes widened. And when she turned, there he was, Alexander, standing before her, eyes filled with regret, heart open, walls broken. And Serena knew in that moment that nothing between them would ever be the same again. Alexander had always been a man of logic, a man who calculated risks, predicted outcomes, and prepared for every possibility. So why, when it came to Serena, did he feel so lost? He had spent sleepless nights battling the emotions he had sworn to never feel. Serena had become his weakness, and that terrified him. That's why he had set the trap, a final test, a way to confirm his worst fear, that she was like all the others, that she wanted him only for his wealth. And yet, as he sat in his dimly lit study, staring at the live feed from the hidden camera in his bedroom, his entire world shattered. At first, he expected it. He expected to see her eyes widen at the sight of the money. He expected her hands to tremble as she reached for the crisp bills. He expected her to gather the fortune into her arms and flee without a second thought. But what he saw instead broke him. Serena didn't touch the money. She didn't even glance at it. Instead, she fell to her knees, gripping the letter in her hands as if it was the only thing keeping her alive. Her shoulders shook violently, her sobs raw and uncontrollable. And then, her voice, barely above a whisper, shattered his soul. "I don't want your money. I wanted you." Alexander's breath caught in his throat. His heart stopped. His entire body tensed as if the weight of his own stupidity had come crashing down on him all at once. Tears streamed down Serena's face as she pressed the letter to her chest, rocking back and forth as if trying to hold herself together. "Why did you do this to me?" she whispered brokenly. "Why couldn't you just believe in me?" Alexander's fingers curled into tight fists as an unfamiliar sting burned behind his eyes. No. This couldn't be happening. He had convinced himself that she would take the money and run, that she was nothing more than another woman hungry for his wealth. But he had been wrong, horribly, devastatingly wrong. For the first time in his life, Alexander Steele, one of the most powerful, most ruthless millionaires in the world, felt like a complete fool. He had doubted her, betrayed her, and in doing so, he had destroyed the only real love he had ever known. His vision blurred as he clenched his jaw, forcing himself to watch the screen. Serena's sobs only grew louder as she whispered the words that ripped his heart in two. "I gave you everything, Alexander. My trust, my heart, my body, and you threw me away like I was nothing." A sharp breath left him as he closed his eyes, his chest aching with regret. He had taken something pure, something precious, and crushed it under the weight of his own fears. And now, he had lost her. Serena slowly lifted her head, her once bright, hopeful eyes now filled with nothing but pain. Her voice was barely a whisper as she spoke. "I loved you." The words slammed into Alexander like a knife to the chest. Loved. Past tense. A ragged breath tore from his throat as he stumbled back against his desk, gripping the edge so hard his knuckles turned white. No, he couldn't lose her. Not like this. Not because of his own mistakes. He needed to fix this. He needed to make it right. But how? How did you repair something you had completely destroyed? His pulse pounded wildly as he made his decision. He had to go to her. He had to beg for her forgiveness. And he had to do it before she walked out of his life forever. Alexander stormed out of his study, his heart racing as he moved faster than he had since his injury. His legs weren't perfect yet. He still had pain, still struggled to walk without assistance. But at that moment, none of it mattered. Nothing mattered except her. He reached the staircase just as Serena reached the front door. Her hand was on the doorknob. She was leaving. Forever. His voice cracked as he called out to her. "Serena, wait!" She froze, but she didn't turn around. For the first time since they met, she didn't rush to his side, didn't ask if he was okay, didn't care. And that was what terrified him the most. "Please." His voice was almost a whisper. Still, she didn't move. Alexander took a shaky breath, knowing this was his last chance. If he didn't fix this now, he would lose her forever. "I was wrong," he admitted, his voice raw with emotion. I thought you were like everyone else. I thought you only cared about money. But I see it now. I see that I was a fool. Silence. Serena's fingers tightened on the doorknob, but she still refused to look at him. Alexander took a step forward, ignoring the pain that shot through his leg. Please, Serena, he pleaded. Give me one more chance. A bitter laugh left her lips. Finally, she turned to face him, and the look in her eyes was cold, a sharp contrast to the warmth she had once given him so freely. One more chance, she repeated, her voice laced with heartbreak. Do you have any idea how badly you hurt me, Alexander? He swallowed hard. I do, and I hate myself for it. Serena let out a slow, shaky breath, her shoulders sagging. For a moment, she looked like she wanted to believe him, wanted to forgive him. But then, her expression hardened, and when she spoke next, her words sent a dagger straight through his heart. I don't trust you anymore. Alexander felt the air leave his lungs. The world blurred around him. No, not trust. Anything but that, because without her trust, he had nothing. Nothing at all. And as she turned away once more, stepping out into the cold night, Alexander realized the awful truth. He had broken more than just her heart. He had broken the one thing that could never be fixed. And now, he was truly alone. Alexander had never known fear like this. Not when his company faced billion-dollar risks, not when he had lost the ability to walk, not even when he had been beaten within an inch of his life. But the thought of losing Serena forever, that terrified him. The moment she walked out of his mansion, his heart screamed at him to chase her, to fix this before it was too late. His legs still ached, his muscles stiff from months of being bedridden, but he pushed through. Pain meant nothing compared to the thought of her never coming back. He had to find her. Now Alexander searched everywhere. Her apartment, her favorite cafe, even the park where she liked to sit and sketch on her rare days off. But she was nowhere. His frustration grew with every passing second. Where could she have gone? Then it hit him. The one place where she always found peace. The old chapel by the riverside. The place she had told him about one night, when she had sat beside him, holding his hand as he lay in bed, vulnerable and lost. When I was little, I used to go to this chapel whenever I was sad. I'd sit on the benches, close my eyes, and pretend my worries would float away with the wind. Hope surged in his chest. He grabbed his car keys and drove through the empty streets, his pulse racing. Please let her be there. Please. The chapel stood silent, bathed in the dim glow of the streetlights. And there, on one of the wooden benches, was Serena. She sat alone, her arms wrapped around herself as she stared into the darkness. Even from a distance, he could see the faint tremble in her shoulders. She had been crying. His heart ached. He took a deep breath and pushed open the doors, his footsteps echoing through the quiet space. She stiffened but didn't turn around. His voice was barely above a whisper. Serena. She froze. Slowly she turned, her wide, tear-streaked eyes locking onto his. For a moment neither of them moved. Then, You thought I loved your money? She whispered, her voice shaking. The pain in her words nearly brought him to his knees. Guilt clawed at his chest. I was a fool, he admitted, his voice raw. The biggest fool in the world. Her lips trembled, her fists clenched at her sides. Then before he could react, she ran straight into his arms. Serena's fist pounded against his chest, her sobs breaking the silence. You broke my heart, Alexander, she cried. I gave you everything. I trusted you. Each word stabbed through him like a blade. He wrapped his arms around her, pulling her closer than ever. Then let me fix it. His voice was hoarse, desperate. Forever. Her body stiffened in his embrace. For a long moment, she didn't say a word. Then in a voice so soft it nearly broke him, she whispered, How? Tears burned behind his eyes as he tightened his grip on her. By proving to you every single day that you mean more to me than anything in this world. She let out a shaky breath against his chest. I don't know if I can trust you again, Alexander. His throat tightened. Then let me spend the rest of my life earning it back. Slowly, hesitantly, she pulled back, her eyes searching his. A war of emotions battled within her. Pain, hope, fear, love. And then just as he thought she might walk away again, she reached up, cupped his face in her trembling hands, and kissed him. The moment their lips met, the world faded away. Her warmth melted through him, chasing away the shadows of doubt and regret. The kiss was not just a kiss, it was forgiveness. It was love. It was a new beginning. When they finally pulled apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "I love you, Serena," he murmured, "and I swear, I will never let you doubt that again." Tears slipped down her cheeks, but this time, they weren't just of sorrow, they were of hope. And in that moment, Alexander knew. He had finally won back the only thing that ever truly mattered. Just when everything seemed perfect, darkness crept back into their lives. Serena was in Alexander's arms that night, feeling safe, feeling loved. But deep inside, an unease gnawed at her heart. She had spent too long living in a world where happiness was fleeting, where love was something that could be ripped away at any moment. And her fears weren't unfounded, because while she lay in his embrace, breathing in his warmth, danger was already closing in. Somewhere in the city, in the shadows of an abandoned warehouse, the same men who had once attacked Alexander were making new plans. But this time, their target wasn't Alexander. It was Serena's brother. The next morning, Serena's phone rang. She answered with a soft smile, still wrapped in the warmth of Alexander's bed. But the second she heard the voice on the other end, her blood turned to ice. "Your brother owes us." Her heart stopped. "And now, so do you." The breath left her lungs. "If you don't leave Alexander Steele by midnight, we'll make sure your brother disappears forever." She sat up so fast that Alexander stirred beside her. His sleepy voice was filled with concern. "Serena? What's wrong?" She forced a smile, her hands trembling. "Nothing. Just a bad dream." But she knew. This wasn't a dream. It was her worst nightmare coming true. Serena barely made it through the day without breaking down. She knew what she had to do. There was no way she would let her brother suffer. No way she would let the people she loved get hurt. There was only one option. She had to leave Alexander, even if it killed her. That night, she sat on the edge of their bed watching him. He looked so peaceful, so different from the ruthless businessman the world knew him to be. With her, he was warm, gentle, a man who had learned how to love, and she was about to destroy him. Tears burned her eyes as she reached out, brushing her fingers through his hair one last time. "Forgive me," she whispered. Then, she left. Alexander woke up to an empty bed. At first, he thought she had just gone to the kitchen. But as the minutes ticked by, an unsettling feeling grew in his chest. Then, he found the note, a single piece of paper. "I'm sorry, I can't do this. I don't belong in your world. Forget me." He crushed the letter in his fist, his jaw tightening. Something wasn't right. Serena wouldn't just leave. Not after everything. Not after their love had survived so much. And then, it hit him. This wasn't her choice. Someone had forced her to do this. His hands curled into fists. He had nearly lost her once. He wouldn't let it happen again. Within an hour, Alexander had his security team tracking her. But there was one thing he had to do himself. Find the men who started this. The ones who had attacked him. The ones who were now threatening the woman he loved. And when he found them, there would be hell to pay. It didn't take long. His power, his wealth, it gave him access to everything. By midnight, he stood in front of a dark alleyway where Serena's brother was being held. And he wasn't alone. His men surrounded the place, weapons ready. The criminals didn't stand a chance. Within minutes, the fight was over. The men who had dared to touch his family, his Serena, were on the ground, their empire destroyed. He walked straight to Serena's brother and untied him. "Are you hurt?" The younger man shook his head, his eyes wide with shock. "Alexander, they made her leave you. They said—" "I know," Alexander said darkly, "and they just made the biggest mistake of their lives." Serena sat alone in a cheap motel room, tears streaming down her face. She had done what they asked. She had walked away. So why did it feel like she had just torn her own heart out? A knock at the door made her jump. She wiped her face, forcing herself to stay strong. But when she opened the door, she froze. Because standing there, his face fierce, his eyes burning with emotion, was Alexander. She gasped. "How did you—" "I found the men. They'll never hurt you or your brother again." Her breath hitched. "You— you saved him?" His jaw tightened. "Did you really think I wouldn't?" She stared at him, overwhelmed. She had left to protect him, and yet here he was, protecting her instead. Alexander took a step closer, his hands framing her face. "You're mine, Serena. Do you hear me?" Her lips parted, her breath shaky. "But I— No more running, no more doubts. You're not fighting alone anymore. Ever." Her heart shattered in the best way, because for the first time in her life, she wasn't alone. Tears spilled from her eyes as she threw herself into his arms. "I love you. I love you more." And that night, as he held her close, as he whispered promises against her skin, she knew nothing would ever tear them apart again. The sun shone brightly over the Steele estate, casting a golden glow over the magnificent garden where the ceremony was set. Flowers of every color lined the aisle, their delicate fragrance drifting through the air. Guests murmured in admiration, their eyes fixed on the grand floral arch where a man stood waiting. But this wasn't just any man. This was Alexander Steele, the billionaire who once refused love, now standing with his heart on full display for the world to see. His tailored black tuxedo fit him perfectly, but it wasn't the expensive suit that made him stand out. It was his expression. A man once cold and emotionless now wore his love like an open book. Eyes soft, lips curved into a rare, genuine smile. And then, the music changed. The moment he had been waiting for had arrived. Everyone turned, their eyes lighting up. Because there she was. Serena Hayes stood at the start of the aisle, radiant beyond words. Her wedding gown was pure white, its fabric hugging her figure before flowing into a breathtaking train. Tiny pearls sparkled along the lace, shimmering like stars under the sunlight. But it wasn't the dress that made her beautiful. It was the way she glowed, the way her eyes locked onto Alexander's, the way her lips trembled as if she, too, couldn't believe this was real. She clutched the bouquet tightly, her fingers shaking slightly, not from fear, but from overwhelming emotion. Because after everything, after the heartbreak, the misunderstandings, the pain, she was finally walking towards the man she loved. And for the first time in her life, she wasn't afraid. As she stepped closer, memories flashed through both of their minds. The first time they met, when he was nothing but an arrogant, broken man, and she was the only one brave enough to challenge him. The nights she cared for him, whispering words of hope when he had given up. The moment he first realized he loved her, staring at her as she tied up her hair, his heart pounding for the first time in years. The night they kissed, a desperate, passionate confession of everything they had both tried to deny. And the moment he almost lost her, when she left to protect her family, breaking both their hearts in the process. But none of it mattered now, because love had won. And now, forever was waiting. When she finally reached him, Alexander took her hands, his grip firm, as if to promise he would never let her go again. The officiant began speaking, but neither of them truly heard. It wasn't the words of the ceremony that mattered. It was the way they looked at each other. Then, it was time for their vows. Alexander took a deep breath before speaking. "Serena, you didn't just heal my body." Her eyes filled with tears. "You healed my heart." A single tear slipped down her cheek, but she was smiling. "I once believed love was a weakness, that it was unnecessary." He exhaled shakily. "But then you came into my life and proved me wrong. You taught me that love isn't weakness, it's the strongest thing in this world." His voice dropped lower, thick with emotion. "And now, I can't imagine a life without you." A soft sob escaped Serena's lips. She had never seen this side of him before, so raw, so open, and it made her love him even more. Taking a deep breath, she whispered her vow. "Alexander, you once told me you didn't need love." She smiled tearfully. "And yet, you gave me more love than I ever dreamed of." A muscle ticked in his jaw as he tried to contain his emotions. "You may have been broken once, but so was I. She squeezed his hands, and together, we healed. His thumb brushed her knuckles, his touch so tender, it sent shivers down her spine. I promise to stand by your side, in darkness and in light, just as you stood by mine. A single tear rolled down Alexander's cheek, and in that moment, the once emotionless CEO, the man who had once locked his heart away, finally let go. By the power vested in me, the officiant announced, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride. But Alexander didn't wait. He cupped her face and crashed his lips against hers in a kiss that was so much more than just a kiss. It was everything. It was a promise, a declaration, a love that had survived through pain, doubt, and fear, and had won. The guests cheered, the cameras flashed. But for Serena and Alexander, the world disappeared, because all that mattered was this moment, the moment they had both found home, in each other. That night, as they danced beneath the twinkling lights of the reception, Serena leaned into his embrace. You really were impossible when we first met, she teased, smiling up at him. Alexander chuckled, pulling her closer. And yet, you stayed, she sighed happily, because I knew something you didn't. He raised an eyebrow. Oh? And what's that? She traced her fingers over his heart. That one day you'd love me more than anything in the world. His smile softened, filled with pure adoration. You were right, he murmured, pressing a kiss to her forehead. And now, you'll never have to doubt it again. And as they swayed together, lost in their love, it was clear. This wasn't just a story about a billionaire and the woman who healed him. This was the most unexpected love story, and it had the happiest ending of all, forever.